The city skyline shimmered in the morning sun, glass towers stretching high like monuments to ambition. Ethan stood at the edge of his latest project, a skyscraper that would soon redefine the horizon. To the world, he was a success story carved in steel and concrete, a millionaire engineer whose name commanded respect in every boardroom. But inside, there was a hollowness he couldn't shake, a silence money had never managed to fill. As he surveyed the sight from his polished shoes to the dust below, something unusual caught his eye. Amid the clang of metal and the roar of machinery, a young woman was bent over, hauling bricks with a quiet rhythm. She wore a hard hat slightly too big for her head, her shirt stained with the marks of labor. Yet her movements carried a kind of grace, her face lit not by wealth or recognition, but by determination. When she paused to wipe the sweat from her brow, she smiled at a fellow worker. A simple, genuine smile that seemed brighter than the skyline itself. Ethan felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a pull stronger than the pride of ownership or the applause of investors. In that moment, his world of blueprints and contracts collided with something far more human. He didn't know her name, but watching her work with such dignity, he felt the first crack in the walls he had built around his heart. It was the beginning of a story he never expected to write. The sky had turned gray that morning, clouds heavy with rain, and the construction site buzzed with unease. Workers rushed to cover equipment and seek shelter as droplets began to fall. Ethan, holding an umbrella near the safety rail, was about to retreat when he saw her, the same woman who had caught his attention days earlier. She was crouched in the mud, supporting an older coworker who had slipped. The man winced in pain, his ankle twisted, but she stayed with him, shielding him from the downpour with nothing but her own body. Rain soaked through her clothes, plastering her hair to her face, but she didn't flinch. Ethan felt something stir deep within him. Here was someone who had little, yet gave everything she had without hesitation. For reasons he couldn't explain, he stepped down from his dry vantage point and walked toward them. "Is he okay?" Ethan asked gently, startling her. She looked up, her eyes wary but kind, and nodded. "He'll be fine. Just needs rest." Her voice was steady, warm despite the storm. Ethan crouched beside her, helping to lift the man. It was the first time their hands brushed, rough calluses against his smooth skin, and the contrast lingered in his mind. As the ambulance arrived, Ethan stayed, his umbrella forgotten. Their conversation was brief, about family, about the dignity of hard work, but it struck him harder than any corporate negotiation ever had. For the first time, he wasn't the engineer in charge, he was simply a man, humbled by her humanity. The days that followed changed something in Ethan. Instead of watching from the glass-paneled office above, he found himself walking the scaffolding, mingling with the crew, always drifting toward her. Maria, that was her name. He learned it one afternoon when he overheard another worker call out to her. The name felt soft on his tongue, in contrast to the hard edges of the world around them. She worked tirelessly, often staying late to double-check details others overlooked. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the steel beams in gold, Ethan struck up another conversation. He asked why she worked so many shifts, why she never seemed to rest. Maria shrugged lightly, brushing dust from her gloves. "My younger brother," she said. "He's the first in our family to go to college. I promised him he'd never have to drop out for money. So I take extra hours. It's worth it." Her words hit Ethan harder than the sound of metal striking stone. For years, he had chased profit, calculating every project in terms of returns and prestige. Yet here she was, measuring her success in the sacrifices she made for someone else's future. That night, alone in his penthouse with its silent walls and sprawling view, Ethan stared out over the city he had helped build. For the first time, the lights below seemed cold. He wondered how many buildings he had raised without ever considering the people inside them. Maria's quiet strength had shaken something loose in him, the question of what it meant to build a life that truly mattered. The evening was heavy with worry when Ethan found Maria sitting alone at the edge of the site, her shoulders trembling though she tried to hide it. The usual spark in her eyes was gone, replaced by fear. When he asked softly what was wrong, she hesitated, then finally whispered, "It's my brother. He's sick, the hospital bills are more than I can ever manage." Her voice cracked as she stared at her worn gloves, ashamed of tears she could no longer hold back. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her everything, that he had the resources, the means, the influence. But instead of grand speeches, he listened, letting her pain spill into the silence between them. Later that night, while Maria worked her shift, Ethan made calls. He arranged the best doctors, cleared every cost, and signed the forms under the name of an anonymous donor. It wasn't about recognition, it was about giving her hope. Days later, when Maria rushed to the hospital, she learned her brother was stable and receiving the finest care. She clutched the paperwork, her eyes scanning the signature she didn't recognize. The gratitude that overwhelmed her was mixed with awe. Someone had seen her struggle and answered without asking for anything in return. When Ethan visited the site again, Maria's eyes met his, shining with tears. She didn't know the truth yet, but in that glance, Ethan realized something deeper. Compassion had built a bridge between them, stronger than steel, unspoken but undeniable. The grand opening of the skyscraper was meant to be a celebration of steel, glass, and Ethan's genius. The city's leaders gathered, cameras flashed, and a ribbon waited to be cut. Yet as Ethan stepped up to the podium, he didn't see the glittering skyline, he saw Maria's tired smile, her brother's hopeful future, and the quiet sacrifices that had taught him the meaning of wealth. He cleared his throat, his voice steadier than he felt. "This building isn't just about height," he said, "it's about what we choose to build for one another." The crowd shifted, curious. Instead of boasting about profits, Ethan announced the creation of a scholarship fund for the families of construction workers, ensuring that no child would abandon a dream because of money. Murmurs rippled into applause, then into cheers. But for Ethan, the true moment came when he turned from the microphone and walked toward Maria. She stood among her co-workers, eyes wide with disbelief, hands trembling as though holding back a tide of emotions. "You taught me what real wealth is," he said softly, so only she could hear. And then, without ceremony, he reached for her hand, his smooth palm meeting her callous grip, the rough and the refined joining like two halves of a whole. Around them, the building soared into the sky, but what rose higher was the feeling between them, love grounded in compassion, built not on power or money, but on the simple truth that humanity is the strongest foundation of all.